Hi everyone, this is Rosie, and today we're going to be sewing the Hannah Sling. So let's get started. Let's take a quick look at the sling. It's approximately 6 inches wide by 8 inches high by 2 3/4 inches deep. On the back there are 2 D-ring connectors, but if you know which side you want to carry your sling on, you can go ahead and just install one of them. The strap connector here can accommodate a strap up to 1.5 inches wide. I am using a 1-inch strap on mine. The front zipper pocket is a pretty generous size, and it will easily hold my iPhone 12 inside the case. And if you look at the pocket here, you're going to see these darts, which make the pocket extra roomy. Inside, you're going to find 6 card slots, and then on the other side we have a small zipper pocket up here that will hold a little bit of cash. And then down here you're going to find a slip pocket, and I always like to have a little notebook with me, and my little notebook will fit right into that pocket. It's also large enough to hold my sunglasses inside the case, and I'm going to put in a package of tissues, and if you prefer to carry a small wallet with you, it will accommodate that as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the materials that you will need to make the sling. First, let's take a quick look at the materials that we will be using for the sling. I have my exterior front and back pieces right here, and I am using 100% cotton quilting fabric. Each one of my cotton quilting fabric pieces has been interfaced with Pellon SF101. Now, I prefer to interface my cotton fabric with the Pellon SF101 before I cut out my pieces. This reduces the amount of cutting that you will need to do. But if you do prefer to cut out your cotton pieces and your Pellon SF101 separately and then interface them together after cutting, you certainly can do that too. For my strap connectors, I'm using cork fabric, and then I'm also using cork fabric for my exterior gusset, and there's no need to interface those gusset pieces. For my interior, I'm also using 100% cotton quilting fabric. Each one of these fabrics has been interfaced with the Pellon SF101, and again, I did pre-fuse my lining fabrics before cutting out any of my pieces. Lastly, I am using Decovil Light for some extra interfacing on some of the pieces. You can use either the Decovil Light or you can use a fusible fleece such as Pellon 987F. For my bias bindings, I am using 100% cotton quilting fabric. And here's the fabric that I will be using for those bindings. For my zipper, I have purchased a 40-inch zipper from By Annie. This is a number 4.5 handbag zipper. So the width of the zipper tape is 1.25 inches, and it does have 2 zipper pulls on it. This zipper is longer than I need it to be, so I will have some extra zipper tape left over. But for the exact measurements that you will need for your 2 zippers, refer to the pattern file. In addition, you need 2 1-inch D-rings, a 1-inch rectangular slider, and a 1-inch swivel clip. And for your interior zipper pocket, you need a number 3 zipper that's 1 inch in width and about 6 inches long. And lastly, you're going to need your seatbelt webbing for your strap, and I am using seatbelt webbing that's 1 inch wide. Our first step will be to interface some of our pieces with the Decovil Light or the fusible fleece, whichever one you're using. So right here I have piece B, and that is going to be interfaced with my Decovil, which is piece G, and you are fusing the Decovil to the wrong side of the piece. You want to place it down so that you have even spacing all the way around the edges. This is to keep the Decovil Light out of the seam allowance. And on this side I have piece A, and again I'll turn it so that the wrong side is facing up, and I'm going to apply my interfacing piece F down on top of piece A, again making sure that I have even spacing all the way around. Then apply your interfacing to your second piece A in the same way. Next, we're going to apply the Decovil light to our lining gusset pieces, which are piece C and piece D. And again, we're going to apply the interfacing to the wrong side of our pieces. So I'm going to take piece H and place it on top of both of my piece C's. And again, making sure that you have even spacing all the way around your interfacing. And then I will place gusset piece I on top of piece D. And now I'll fuse all of my interfacings off camera. And here are all my pieces after fusing the interfacings in place. Take your exterior and your lining piece B, and we're going to mark some lines on the wrong side of the pieces. So I'll start with the exterior piece. First thing that I want to do is mark lines 1/4 of an inch away from these edges here, and those marks are going to be sewing lines. Now you will see me using a friction pen in the videos. I only use these for demonstration purposes. Be careful if you use one of these, because while the marks will disappear with heat, they can come back with cold. Go ahead and mark those lines. Do that on both sides. And then next, I want to mark lines 1/4 of an inch away from this edge here. So we'll be marking a line here and 1/4 of an inch away from this edge here. And then you'll go ahead and take your second lining piece B and mark the same exact lines. From my zipper, I need to prepare 2 separate zippers. So I'm going to mark the length of each zipper on the wrong side of the zipper. And I'm going to start marking up from the bottom of the zipper, and I'm going to have my zipper pulls here right at the top of the zipper. So we'll turn this over, and I've already gone ahead and marked the 2 lengths that I need. So this first one right here is 12 inches long, and the second length right here is 15 inches long. So after marking them, you're going to take your zipper and you want to move the zipper pulls down into those 2 sections. So I'll move the first one, and as I move that zipper pull, I want to make sure that I'm within the marks for the 12-inch zipper. And then I'm going to take the second pull and pull it all the way down until that zipper pull is within the marks of the 15-inch zipper. And then I'll just go ahead and cut right on the lines that I marked. So here's my 12-inch length. And I'll just cut right on those lines. And then I'll cut off the bottom portion. And then for the 15-inch length, I just need to make 1 cut right here. And now that I have both zippers prepared, I'm just going to sew over the ends of both zippers to prevent the pull from coming off accidentally. I am going to do that off camera, but you always want to be careful when you're sewing over zipper teeth, and you never ever want to sew over metal zipper teeth. Mark the center of your 12-inch zipper, and then you also want to mark the center of your exterior piece B. I do have the center marks on your pattern pieces, so you can use your pattern piece to mark the center, or you can simply fold this in half and mark it that way as well. I'm going to turn these over, just like this. Now when I install my zipper onto the exterior pocket, I want the zipper pull to open to the left. So I have the zipper positioned with the zipper pull to the left right now. I'm going to open it up all the way. And now I want to place the right side of the zipper against the right side of the exterior, and it's the bottom portion of the zipper here that I am placing on the exterior. So I'll just flip it this way, and the first thing that I want to do is line up my center marks. So you just go ahead and find the centers and place them together, and I'm going to place in a small glass head pin. And I do like to use the small glass head pins as opposed to wonder clips, because the pins really do hold everything in place much better. You will not have your zipper shifting on you. Then you're going to pick up your piece and start pinning towards the curve on each side. And as you get to the curve, you want to round everything around your fingers to ease the zipper into that curve. I do not at all recommend clipping into your zipper. It's only going to cause problems down the road because zipper tape frays very easily. So just keep easing that around your finger, and then you want to clip down to the side, or pin down to the side, I should say. Now if you remember before, we made these markings here. You're only going to sew right down to this point where these two lines intersect with each other. So what I like to do is place my zipper in place there, and then I'll put a pin right across where that 1/4 inch marking is so that I know not to sew past that spot. So I'll just put it in, and I hit it right the first time. You can see the intersection of the pin is right where this mark is. Now you'll go ahead and pin the opposite side of the zipper in exactly the same way. After you have your zipper pinned into place, you'll be sewing the zipper on with a 1/4 inch seam, so you're sewing 1/4 inch away from the edge of the zipper. You're going to start and stop where we put these pins in earlier, and these are the pins that are 1/4 inch down from this edge right here. And you can see that more clearly from this side. I've also pinned the opposite end of the zipper down here just to keep it out of the way as I'm sewing. And the zipper tape that's falling below this edge right here should be approximately 1 5/8 inches long on each side. So measuring from this edge down to the bottom of the zipper should be about 1 5/8 inches. I'm sewing on a Juki TL 2010Q. I will be sewing 1/4 inch away from the edge of the zipper tape here with a stitch length of 3.0. I also already have my needle positioned to start sewing 1/4 inch below this edge, and you do want to back stitch at both ends. Now as you approach your pins, you do want to remove them because you never want to sew over a pin. It can be helpful to use a stiletto to help hold the zipper tape in place as you sew along. You just want to go slow around the curves. Try and keep it nice and flat. And this pin right here indicates my stopping point. Now if you look at the back side of the piece, you can see that my stitching line hit the mark, which is right at that intersection. But on this side, it came in a little bit too far, so from the wrong side, I'm just going to go ahead and correct that. And it is important for this to hit the mark for this particular zipper application. Take your piece B lining and you want to find and mark the center. Then you're going to place the lining on top of the exterior with the right sides together, and you want to match up those center points. Now when I clip these pieces together, I do use the Wonder Clips. It's really not necessary to use the glass head pins once the zipper is initially sewn into place. So just clip all along that zipper tape. You want to make sure that your edges are all nice and even. You want your side edges and this edge right here to all be even with each other as well. And then you can go ahead and clip the other side in the same way. After you have the lining and the exterior clipped into place, turn it over, and you're going to sew the two pieces together by sewing right on top of your previous line of stitching. Once again, I'm sewing with a stitch length of 3.0, and I'm just going to follow along my previous line of stitching. You want to try and keep your clips in for as long as you possibly can, and try and keep those edges together. And I will backstitch at both ends. Just want to go slow, especially around those curves. After sewing the lining and exterior together, you're going to clip around the curves on both the exterior and the lining, but I don't want you to clip through your zipper tape. So just be careful that you're only clipping the fabric. And you'll do this on both sides. And clip right up to the stitching. Make sure that you do not clip through your stitching. So you go ahead and do the other side, and then you can do the same thing on the lining side. I finished clipping through the two curves on the exterior side and the two curves on the lining side, and then the last thing I want to do is put a little drop of fray check right at the intersection of these two lines here. And I'm going to do that on both the lining side and the exterior side. And then we'll just give this a little bit of time to dry. After the fray check is dried, we're going to make a few cuts in these corners right here. So you want to make a cut that's at a 45-degree angle right from this corner up to your stitching. So about like this. But you want to make sure that you do not cut through your stitching. And you also do not want to cut through your zipper tape. So I'll just take my scissors, and it's good to have a nice sharp pair of pointed scissors here. And I'm just going to make my cut, making sure that I'm not cutting through my zipper tape, right up to that line of stitching. You're going to stop just shy of that line of stitching. And do the same thing on this side. And then you also want to do the same thing on the lining side. After you make those cuts, we're going to turn this right side out. So you're going to push out those curves. You can tug on your zipper tape a little bit to get everything to look nice and smooth along your seam line. Make sure it looks good on both sides. And then you want to go ahead and close your zipper. After you've turned your zipper pocket right side out, you want your zipper to be sandwiched in between your lining and exterior, just like you see here on both sides. Then you want to take your exterior and flip it up in this direction. Both of these edges should be laying flat on top of the zipper with the right side of the exterior facing the right side of the zipper. Then you're going to turn this over and do the same thing on this side. Flip your lining up, and both of these edges should be facing now the wrong side of the zipper. So the right side of the lining will be facing the wrong side of the zipper on both sides. Then you're going to take your lining and exterior, and you're going to clip them together. And you want the top edge of the lining right here to be even with the top edge of the exterior. And the zipper will be sandwiched in between. So just line them up like this. The edge of the lining and the edge of the exterior should be right on the edge of that zipper tape. And then you're going to clip that together. And then you're going to do the same thing on this side, but on this side you need to make sure that your zipper is open slightly. So once again, line up this top edge of the lining with the top edge there of the exterior. Make sure that the side edges are even with the edge of the zipper tape. And once you have everything lined up properly, you can go ahead and clip that in place. Now, we're going to sew the lining and the exterior together right along that line that we drew at the beginning of the video. So you'll start here and you're going to sew right to that intersection here, and you'll backstitch at both ends. Then you'll do the same thing on this side. You're going to sew right along this line and you're going to stop at that intersection, and you will backstitch at both ends. I'm about to sew that little seam there. You want to stay right on top of the line that we drew at the beginning of the video. So you'll be starting at the end and stitching right to where that intersection is. You do want to backstitch at both ends, and for this I'm actually going to use a smaller stitch length. I'm at about 2.5. And then you can go ahead and sew the other side in exactly the same way. When you're done sewing those little seams, you should have nice clean intersections on both sides of the exterior and on both sides of your lining. The last thing that I'm going to do here is top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper seam. I'm going to use a stitch length of 3.0, and I will back stitch at both ends, and I am starting my stitching right on the side here. I do like to do this with my zipper open. And I'll pivot and start sewing up and around the curve. We need to sew the darts closed that we marked earlier. So you're just going to place your exterior right sides together and clip everything in place. And then you're going to sew right on top of the line here. So clip your second dart closed on the exterior. And then you're going to clip the darts together on your lining side as well. I'm sewing the darts closed on both the exterior and the lining, and I'm using a stitch length of 2.5, and you just want to stitch right on top of the line that you marked earlier in the video. Do back stitch at both ends. you want to go ahead and clip open the top of each one of those seams. Make sure that you don't clip through your stitching. And then after you clip them open, you want to press those seams flat. And you're going to do this to all 4 darts. Here are my seams pressed open. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is just trim back the excess zipper. I leave about 1/4 of an inch of excess tape below that seam line. Now we're going to clip the lining and the exterior wrong sides together. And after we finish clipping this all the way around, we're going to baste the lining and the exterior together 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. You want to make sure that you match up those darts. Keep all of your edges even with each other. And now that I have it clipped together, I'm just going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way around, and I'm going to do that off camera. In this step, we're going to sew the zippered pocket to the front of the bag. So you need the zippered pocket and one of your A pieces. On the A piece, we're going to mark 2 lines. The first line will be 4 3/4 up from the bottom. And I'm just going to use a chalk wheel to mark that line. Then I'm going to flip it over this way. And the next line that I draw is going to be 2 1/4 inches down from the top. And then I also want to find the center of this line that I just finished drawing. So I will just mark that with my ruler. Now I want to place a piece of double-sided adhesive tape right above this line that's marked 2 1/4 inches down from the top, and I want to place my tape about 1/4 of an inch in from each side. And then you just want to burnish it down well. Now go ahead and remove that release paper to expose the other side of the adhesive, and you're going to take your pocket. You want to open the zipper all the way, and you need to know where the center of your zipper is. We did mark the center lines towards the beginning of the video. And you're going to take the pocket and turn it in this direction here, and you're going to place the right side of the zipper tape down onto the exterior, the right side of the exterior, and you're going to line up the center mark that we drew on the line with a center mark on that zipper. And you want the edge of the zipper tape to be right on top of that line that's marked 2 1/4 inches down from the top. And then you'll burnish it down well. Try and stay right on that line. You're going to burnish it down well, so it should look just like this. And we're going to sew the zipper on with a 1/4 inch seam. But we want to start our stitching 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of piece A. You'll stitch all the way across, and then you'll stop 1/4 of an inch in from this side here. And I like to mark the sides with a pin 1/4 of an inch in, so I know where to start and stop when I'm sewing. I have placed a pin 1/4 of an inch in from each side edge so that I know where to start and stop my sewing line. I'm ready to sew in my zipper. I'm going to use a stitch length of 2.5, and I will be sewing 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper tape. And I actually went and marked that 1/4 inch stitch line with a chalk wheel. Now I've dropped my needle down into the zipper tape that's 1/4 of an inch away from the side edge. And you do want to back stitch at both ends. And then you just sew straight across. And now that I'm 1/4 of an inch away from the opposite side, I will backstitch. Now you need to find and mark the center bottom of the zipper pocket, and I've marked mine with a pin so it's a little bit easier for you to see. And then you also need to find the center bottom of piece A, which I've also marked with a pin. On the line that we drew 4 3/4 up from the bottom, I've placed a pin on that line on each side. Now you want to take this edge right here, and this edge is going to be lined up with the line that we marked 4 3/4 up from the bottom, just like this. So go ahead and line it up and put a clip into place. Now for the zipper tape, you want the edge of the zipper tape to be even with the edge of piece A, and as the zipper folds back on itself, it should be at somewhat of a 45-degree angle. And then you'll go ahead and clip the zipper tape to the edge of piece A. Now on this side here, you want this edge to be sitting on the line that's 4 3/4 inches up from the bottom, and then you'll put a clip in to hold it in place. And then we're going to do the same thing with the zipper. We're just going to clip the edge of the zipper tape to the edge of piece A. Now you want to line up your bottom centers. So you're going to line up the bottom of the zipper pocket with the bottom of piece A. You can put a clip on each side of those pins, and then I'll just remove the pins. And now we're going to start clipping towards the curve. You want to try and keep all of your edges even as much as you can. Use as many clips as you need. And then I like to turn it over so that I can ease this curve into the curve of the pocket. It should fall right into place for you. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Using your curve. After the pocket is clipped into place, we're going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way around the pocket. And this is what it looks like from the opposite side. I'm ready to sew on the zipper pocket, and I'm using a stitch length of 3.0, and I'll only be stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and I will back stitch at both ends. And here is our completed front. In this step, we're going to be sewing the interior card slot panel. You will need 2 of the interior side panels that you've cut out, plus your card slot panel. We're going to put the side panels aside for a minute, and we're going to work on the card slot panel. I want you to open it up and place it wrong side up on your work surface. The first thing that you'll do is draw a line straight down the center of that panel. And next we're going to start marking some lines, and we're going to mark all of these lines up from the bottom. The first line that you mark is going to be a solid line, and that is going to be 5 inches up from the bottom. Then you're going to mark a dashed line that's 9 inches up from the bottom. The next line will be a solid line, 9.5 inches up from the bottom. Then at 13.5 inches, you're going to be drawing in another dashed line. And at 14 inches, you'll draw in a solid line. At 18 inches, you're going to draw a dashed line. At 18.5 inches, you're going to draw a solid line. At 22.5 inches, you're going to draw a dashed line. And at 23 inches, you will be drawing in a solid line. At 27 inches, you're going to draw in a dashed line. At 27.5 inches, draw in a solid line. And at 31.5 inches, draw in a dashed line. Now we're going to start pressing back on all of the solid lines. When you do this, you want to fold back on the solid line so that the right sides are together. So here's my 5-inch line. I'm just going to fold right back on that line. I want to make sure that my side edges are even. And once I have everything lined up properly, I'm going to press that in place. Now I did use permanent ink here because I don't want these lines to vanish right now. Next, I'm going to fold back on the 9.5-inch line. So again, fold right sides together. Make sure that your side edges are even and press. And now I will continue to fold back on all of those solid lines and press them in place. After you finish folding back on the solid lines and pressing them, you're going to take each one of these solid lines and you want to bring it up to the dashed line, just like this. You want to make sure that your side edges are even, and you want that center line to be matching up there in the middle. And then you're going to press. Now I'm going to take my next folded solid line, bring that up to the dashed line, and press in place. And you'll continue by bringing up each one of those solid lines up to the dashed line. And once you have everything folded and pressed into place, you'll just bring everything together. And then I just like to give it a good pressing from the back side here. And then I'll turn it over and press again from the right side of the fabric. And now you're going to take the card slot panel over to your sewing machine, and you want to sew on each one of the folded lines. And we're just going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from each folded line. I'm ready to sew down on those folded lines, and I'm just going to be stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0. Do want to backstitch at both ends. Now when you're sewing, we're not going to be sewing down the valleys. We're only going to be sewing on the hills. After top stitching along the folds, just position your card slots in place, clip them together, and now we're going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from each side. And I do like to do this from the bottom up. And I'll just be using a stitch length of 3.0. And I'm starting right at the bottom of that first card slot there. I want to trim my card slot panel down to 8.5 inches. And I want to measure the 8.5 inches from the top to the bottom. So this is the top of the card slot here. I'll just place the ruler on top. You want to try and make sure that everything looks nice and square. And once you have everything all lined up and looking good, then you can go ahead and trim it. So this is what it should look like now from the back. Next, take the two interior side panels and we're going to place them right sides together on top of the card slots and clip them in place. Make sure that your top and bottom edges are even, as well as your side edges. After you have them clipped into place, we're going to sew down each side with a 1/4 of an inch seam. I am sewing with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance at a stitch length of 3.0, and you do want to backstitch at both ends. After sewing the interior side panels into place, you want to press them open and you want your seams to be pressed towards those side panels. Now we're going to top stitch alongside that seam, and you will be sewing on the interior panel side of the seam. So just top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. I'll be using a stitch length of 3.0, and I am going to backstitch at both ends. The last thing that we need to do for the card slot panel is to cut it out using pattern piece A. So I like to turn this over so that the wrong side is facing up. And if you remember, we marked a line straight down the center of the card slots. I'm going to take pattern piece A and match my center marks on the pattern piece with the center marks of the card slot, just like this. And you want to make sure that the top and bottom edges are even with your pattern piece. Once you have it lined up properly, you can go ahead and trace around piece A. Do that on both sides. After tracing, go ahead and cut that panel out with your scissors. We need to sew the card slot panel to the front of the bag. Now, on the back, I've marked all the center points. So I have the top and bottom center marked and the side centers marked on both pieces. And I'm going to place them wrong sides together. I will start by matching up all of my center points first. And then I clip the two pieces together. And once I have all of the centers clipped, then I'm going to clip all the way around, and we're going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. My bag front and the interior card slot panel is all clipped together, and I'm going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0 all the way around the perimeter, and I am going to do that off camera. In this step, we will be sewing our interior zipper and slip pocket panel. So you need the 3 pieces that will cut out for that center panel. You need your 2 interior side panels, and you need your number 3 zipper. I'm going to take everything away except for the longest panel. We're going to mark some lines on this panel here. And just like we did for the card slots, we want to mark a couple of lines. And we will be marking from the top of the panel. So wherever the top of the panel, whichever end is top for you, that's where you want to mark from. The first line is going to be a solid line that's marked 5.5 inches down from the top. And the second line that you mark is going to be 13 inches down from the top, and you want that to be a dashed line. Now, just like we did for the card slots, we're going to fold back on that 5.5 inch line, the solid line. Make sure that you're right on the line, make sure that your edges are nice and even, and then you're going to press. Then next you want to take that fold and bring it up to the dash line, and then you're going to press again. Just make sure that those edges are nice and even. And then I'll go and press again from the opposite side. Next, you want to top stitch straight across this fold here, and I'm going to do that off camera with a stitch length of 3.0, and I will be top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Take the panel that has your slip pocket and your number 3 zipper. You want to place the zipper right sides together on the top edge of the panel and clip in place. I also like to have my zipper pull on the left side here. So just go ahead and put in a couple of clips. Next, take the piece that's going to be the actual zipper pocket, and you'll place these 2 pieces right sides together with the zipper sandwiched in between. Make sure that all of your edges are even, your top edges and your side edges. And you'll sew these sections together with a 1/4 of an inch seam along the top edge here with a stitch length of 3.0, and I'm going to do that off camera. Flip the zipper pocket piece so that the wrong side of the pocket piece is facing the wrong side of the slip pocket panel, and then you want to press the seam. and then you'll top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this seam right here with a stitch length of 3.0, and I'm going to do that off camera. Now you want to take the zipper pocket and you want to bring it right sides together, and you want this edge here to be even with the top edge of your zipper. And again, making sure that all of your side edges are even with each other. And you're going to clip it in place. You can go ahead and give that a little bit of a pressing if you want. Then we'll flip this over, and you're going to take the last piece that you cut out for this panel, and you're going to clip the right side of this panel to the right side of the zipper. Then you're going to sew straight across that seam 1/4 of an inch from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0, and I'm going to do that off camera. Then flip that top section up, give it a little bit of a pressing, and then top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0, and again I will do that off camera. I finished the top stitching here, and then I also went and basted down each long edge. When you do this, you want to make sure that your zipper pull is open slightly. Now we need to cut the panel to size just like we did for the card slots, and I need this to be 8.5 inches long, and I'm going to measure down from the top. I have my ruler in position, and now I'm just going to cut straight across. My panel is trimmed to size, and we can remove this piece. We don't need it anymore. And now you can also go ahead and trim your zipper tape so that it meets the edge of the panel on each side. And then just like we did for the card slot panel, we're going to take those interior side panels and clip one to each side of this panel. And then you're going to sew everything together with a 1/4 inch seam. I will use a stitch length of 3.0, and I am going to sew them off camera. Press your side panels open, and you want those seams to be pressed towards the outer edges. Then you're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the seam line, exactly the way that you did for your card slots. Then the last thing we need to do is cut out the shape of the panel using pattern piece A. And once again, I have my centers marked. I'm going to line up the center marks on the pattern piece with those marks, and then I can trace around the pattern piece and cut it out. You're going to do this exactly the way that you did for your card slot panel. And here is our finished slip and zipper pocket panel. In this step, we will be working on the back of the bag, and we're going to start by creating our strap connectors. So these two here are the larger pieces that is going to be at the top of the back of the bag, and we will be attaching our seatbelt webbing to these connectors. And then these two connectors here will be for our D-rings. We will start by creating the connectors for the D-rings. I have my two pieces here, and I have them laid out so that the 2.5 inch side is going this way and the 2 inch side is going this way. You're going to mark a line straight down the center of each one of these pieces, and then you're going to put a piece of double-sided tape on each side of those lines. Then you'll remove the release paper, and you want to fold the edge of the D-ring and place that edge onto that center line that we just drew. Do this to both sides. And then you'll do the same thing for the other one. When you're done adhering those edges to the tape, we're going to top stitch straight across the length, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. We want to connect our seatbelt webbing to this strap connector here, so I'm just going to place down a piece of double-sided adhesive tape just to temporarily hold that seatbelt webbing in place. So I'm going to take my seatbelt webbing and I'll just place the end right on the edge of that connector. You want to try and get it centered from side to side. And I did go ahead and singe the ends of my seatbelt webbing so that it doesn't fray. Then you'll take your second piece and place it on top of the first piece and hold it together with some clips. Try to get your edges even and put in a few clips to hold everything together. After clipping it in place, we're going to stitch around the 3 sides with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to top stitch with a stitch length of 3.0, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and I will back stitch at both ends. Next, you'll slip the D-ring on, and then you're going to bring the wrong sides of the piece together, and then you're just going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And when you're done with this, you can go ahead and prepare the second D-ring connector in the same way. Now I'm sewing the connector with the strap, so I'm going to use a stitch length of 3.0 and a seam allowance of 1/4 of an inch, and do back stitch at both ends. And just take it slow around the curves. When you get to the area where your seatbelt webbing is, you can back over that a couple of times just to make that area nice and secure. You'll clip your curves. You need to be careful not to cut through your stitching. And once you have those curves clipped, you can go ahead and turn this right side out. Now I can turn this right side out. You can pull on the strap a little bit to help ease it out. Get your fingers in there. Push out those curves, and then you can also take a point turner and help to ease out that seam. Now when you do this, be very careful that you don't poke through your seam. And you also have that piece of tape that we put on there, just peel that off. I have my connector turned right side out. You want your seam here to be laying right up on that top edge. Once you have everything turned out nicely, you can go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch around these 3 sides, and I'm going to do that off camera with a stitch length of 3.0. Take your remaining piece A and mark a line 2 inches up from the bottom. And then we're going to attach our D-ring connectors so that the bottom of the connector is sitting right on top of that line. Just like this, and then you can go ahead and hold them in place with a clip. Next, you'll take your strap connector, and the edge of the strap connector needs to be even with the top of piece A. Get it nice and centered and clip in place. And then you'll just want to make sure that you have even spacing on each side of the connector. Then go ahead and baste everything in 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. I'll do that off camera with a stitch length of 3.0. The last thing that we need to do for the back of the sling is to baste the exterior to the panel, which has the slip and zipper pocket. And you're going to place them wrong sides together, just like you did for the front. So line up all of your edges. And then you're going to clip the two pieces together all the way around. After clipping the two sides together, you're going to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all around the perimeter. I'm basting 1/8 of an inch away from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0. We are ready to construct the gusset, so you need the exterior and interior gusset pieces along with your 15-inch zipper and your binding. And we're going to start by installing the zipper into the upper gusset. So we'll take the zipper, we want it to be right side up, and here I have the two upper gusset pieces. We're going to take the upper gusset pieces and place them right sides together onto the zipper. And you can go ahead and use some clips to hold everything in place. You want the edge of the gusset to be even with the edge of the zipper tape. We can remove this piece right now. Now I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to take one of my gusset lining pieces and we're going to clip that to the opposite side of the zipper. So the right side of the gusset will be facing the wrong side of the zipper. You want to match up the ends of both the exterior and interior gusset. Make sure that they're nice and even there on the edge. And then you're going to clip in place all the way along the length. After clipping everything into place, we're going to sew straight across here with a 1/4 inch seam, and I actually went ahead and marked in my 1/4 inch seam line. I'm sewing with a stitch length of 3.0 and a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I will back stitch at both ends. Now open this up, and you want to bring the wrong side of the exterior and the interior together, and then you're going to clip those two sections together. You want those edges to be nice and even with each other. And you can just finger press along the seam line there. Then you're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and baste the 3 remaining sides together. I'm going to do my top stitching and my basting 1/8 of an inch away from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0. You can pull your zipper and the gusset away from each other just to help keep that seam nice and flat. I will back stitch. When you're finished, go ahead and sew in the opposite side of the gusset on the opposite side of the zipper in exactly the same way. Here is the upper gusset completed, and it should be measuring 3 1/4 inches wide. Now we can sew our lower gusset pieces to the upper gusset, and we're going to start with the exterior side. Open up your zipper slightly, and then you're going to take the exterior lower gusset and place it on top of the upper gusset with the right sides together, and you're going to clip your short ends into place. And you'll clip the other end on as well. Make sure that all of your side edges are even. Then we're going to flip it over and take the lining side of the gusset, place it right sides together with the lining side of the upper gusset, and you will clip that in place as well, making sure that your short edges are even. And after clipping, we're going to sew straight across the short ends with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm sewing with a 1/4 inch seam and a stitch length of 3.0. You do want to backstitch at both ends. Then you can go ahead and stitch the other side as well. Trim off the ends of the zipper on both ends. And now we can turn this right side out. Your gusset should be turned right side out with the exterior facing you and the lining towards the inside. The long edge of the exterior and the lining side of the gusset should be clipped together with the wrong sides together. We're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this seam here and from the seam on the other side. And then we're going to baste the 2 long edges of both the exterior and lining gusset together. I'm starting by basting the exterior and lining lower gussets together. I will be stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the edge with a stitch length of 3.0. When I pivot to do the top stitching, I will also be maintaining that 1/8 inch top stitching away from the seam line, and I will also be using a stitch length of 3.0. So I will backstitch here. I have the lining sitting on the bed of the machine. So now I'm going to pivot and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that seam line. And then I'll pivot one more time and baste down the other long edge of the lower gusset. And then I'll top stitch across this last seam. Take your 2 strips of binding. You want to place them right sides together and sew the short ends together with a 1/4 inch seam. I've already sewn this one, and after you sew it, just press that seam open. Now we want to take the binding, and we're going to sew the binding to the wrong side of the gusset. So we'll clip it in place, and we will be sewing the binding onto the gusset with a 1/8 inch seam. You want to be careful not to stretch the binding as you're clipping it in place, because it is a bias binding, which means that it has a lot of stretch to it. So just let it lay down and clip. I have the first piece of bias binding clipped into place, and now I'm going to do the same thing with my second piece of binding, and I will clip it to the opposite side of the gusset. Once you have both bindings clipped into place, you're going to baste them onto the gusset 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And I will do that off camera. In this step, we will sew the front of the sling to the gusset. So I have the front right here, and the first thing you want to do is mark the side centers and the top and bottom centers. Again, you can use your pattern piece to find those centers. I also marked each center with a pin to help you see it a little bit easier. We need to find the top and bottom centers of the gusset. I do have the lining side facing out. You want to look at the exterior side and find that side seam on the gusset on both sides. You're going to match up those side seams and hold them together with a clip. Then you'll stretch the gusset to the left and to the right, and where the fold is, you're going to put a mark, and that is going to be the top center, because that's on the side where the zipper is, and this will be the bottom center. And then you're going to do the same exact thing on this side. Match up the side seams, clip them together, stretch to the left and to the right, and place a mark. Now I will release those clips, and I'm going to bring back the front of the bag. We want the zipper to open, or I like my zipper to open to the left. So this is the position that your gusset needs to be in right now for clipping to the front of the bag. First thing that you want to do is match up all your center points. So we have this mark here on the gusset, and we'll match that up with the center point of the front. And I'll put a clip in on both sides. Then I'll flip it over and match the center points up on the bottom. And a clip on each side of that pin. Now the side seam of the gusset right here is the center point for the side of the gusset. So you want to place that seam line right at the center mark on the gusset, on the front of the bag. Then do the same thing on the other side. Match up the seam with the side center of the bag. It's helpful to open up your zipper here a little bit. So just like this. And then you'll clip everything together. So this is what you should have right now. You have the gusset clipped to the front of the bag at the top, bottom, and side centers. Now we can start clipping the rest of the gusset in place. I like to start on the side here, and I'll clip towards the curve. And then I'll put a couple of clips in the top. After I have those clips in place, I like to turn it to this side, and I want to ease this curve into the gusset. Now some people will like to make little snips around the gusset to help everything sit in there properly. I actually don't like to do that, but if you're comfortable doing that, that's fine. If you do, the clips, the cuts that you make into your gusset should not be more than 1/8 of an inch deep. But I think you'll find that this is going to ease in very nicely without doing that. Now we'll go ahead and clip this side of the gusset in place. I'll put a couple of clips in the bottom. And then again, I'll turn it this way, and I'll just ease that curve into the gusset and clip everything in place. Clip that curve into place. And then you'll go ahead and work on this side. Here's the gusset clipped to the front of the bag with the right sides together. I do like to open my zipper all the way as I'm sewing around. This is what it looks like from the back. Now you want to make sure that you didn't put your card slot panel in upside down. So this is the top of my bag, and this is the top of my card slot right here. Now some people like to put staples in around the curves. That's fine too. Just if you use the staples, make sure that they're inside the seam allowance. Now as you sew, we're going to be sewing from the gusset side, and we'll be pushing the gusset down. Now when you push the gusset down, what it tends to do is pull the gusset away from the edge of the bag, especially around the curves. So you can use a stiletto to help hold everything in place as you're sewing. So we're going to go ahead and sew this on right now. I will be sewing with a stitch length of 3.0 and a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You just want to take it slow. I will back stitch here at the beginning. Try and keep those edges together the best that you can. You'll see as I'm pushing this down, it is pulling away a little bit from the side of the front. But if you just go slowly and hold everything firmly with your stiletto, you should be okay. And you want to keep those clips in for as long as you possibly can. The bottom front is the hardest part to sew in because of those darts that we have in the front of the bag. But again, you're just going to go slow. And just try and keep everything as flat as you possibly can. Now as I approach my curve here, I actually did stop because the gusset was pulling a little bit farther away than I would have liked it to. So I stopped and I just put in a few staples. Here's one of them. And this is the stapler that I like to use. It's the mini stapler by Tim Holtz. And those staples are only 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Here's another one right here. And they just hold everything very nicely in place. I still use my stiletto even though I have those staples in there. Also, when I put in the staples, I like to count how many I've put in so that I take out that number. I'm always afraid of leaving in a staple in my finished project. When you're done sewing, just go ahead and check everything really well. Make sure that your seam allowances look good. And then I like to turn it right side out just so I can check my seam on the right side. And this is what it looks like now with the right side turned out. Everything looks good to me. So now we're ready to go ahead and clip the back of the bag in place. In this step, we will sew the back of the bag to the gusset. So you'll take the back of the bag and you're going to clip the right side of the back to the right side of the gusset. And once again, you want to start by matching up all of your center points. And again, the side seam of the gusset right here is the center point for the side. Now that I have all my center points clipped together, I'm just going to go ahead and clip the back to the gusset exactly the same way that we did for the front. If you decide that you ever want to use staples, I'll show you how I do it. You would just ease everything in the way you normally would with the clips. And then I just take my little stapler and I'll just staple 1/8 inch into that curve there. I normally don't staple. I only staple if I find that things are slipping apart as I'm sewing. Then I'll just stop, take my piece out, and put in a few staples. And again, I always count how many staples that I put in so that I make sure that I take out that same number of staples. Here's the back, clipped into place, and now we're ready to sew. Once again, I'm sewing the back in from the gusset side with a stitch length of 3.0 and a seam allowance of 1/4 of an inch. And you just want to take it slow. As you're going around, you just want to try and flatten everything out as much as you can. So you want to push the other side, the front side of the gusset, out of the way. And I do have the zipper opened all the way. After the back is sewn into place, go ahead and check all of your seams again. And once you're sure that everything looks good, you can go ahead and sew your binding down. Now you can either sew this by hand or by machine. It's up to you. My preference is always sewing it down by hand, but for this bag I'm actually going to sew it down by machine just to save a little bit of time here. And I'll show you how I like to do that. First thing that I want to do is fold back the edge of the binding so that it's even with the edge of the bag. Then you want to take this folded edge, bring it down this way, and you want the folded edge of the binding to be covering your stitching. Now, what I'm going to do is use a little bit of glue to hold everything in place. And this is the one that I like to use. It's called Tear Mender, and it works really well. So you just dab a little bit of glue within that seam line and fold it over. Again, making sure that you're covering your line of stitching, and then hold that in with a few clips. You're going to do this all the way around. I like this glue because it's very fluid and it's actually very strong. It holds really well. And as you go around this curve here, you'll find that your binding will sit in very nicely because it is a bias binding. So you'll keep going around the bag until you have the binding on both sides in place. Here's the binding all clipped into place on both sides of the interior. I'm going to sew the binding on with a stitch length of 3.0. I am sewing from the gusset side. This is also the side that we originally sewed the binding onto the gusset. I like to just stitch right in the ditch here. And you're just going to go ahead and stitch all the way around. I will back stitch at both the beginning and the end. And as always, just go slowly around the curves. Then go ahead and sew the binding on the opposite side of the bag in exactly the same way. Now we can go ahead and turn the bag right side out. I just like to push from the bottom. Get your hands in here and just push. You want to round out all of your corners, just push out those curves. You can also get inside the zipper pocket here and push from inside the zipper pocket. Now we can go ahead and install the slider and the swivel clip onto the strap. First of all, you want to make sure that your strap is not twisted. And then you want to go ahead and get to the end of the strap here. You're going to take your slider and you want to put the end of the strap up through the bottom of the slider, and your strap should be to the left of the bar. Now my bar is movable. You may have a stationary one. It doesn't matter. The strap needs to be to the left of the bar. Then you're going to go ahead and put the end of the strap down over the bar and back down through the rectangle ring. So this is what it should look like now. Your strap is going up one side and down the other, and it's also going over that slider bar. Then the next thing that you're going to do is take your strap and put it through the swivel clip, just like this. And then you're going to come back over to the slider, and you want to once again put the end of the strap up through the bottom of the slider with the strap on the left side of the bar. Pull it up, and then you're going to go back over the bar again. This time you'll be on the right side of the slider bar. Just put it down in. And then you'll go ahead and sew or use rivets, whatever you like, to secure the end of the strap to the strap here, and the end of the strap is going to be right in between the two sections of strap. Go ahead and just clip it in place for now. And then you can either sew straight across the end of the strap or use rivets, use an end cap, whatever you like. And then you can go ahead and hook the swivel clip into the D-ring. Well, here's our sling all completed. I do hope that you've enjoyed watching this tutorial, and I do hope that you'll give the pattern a try. I can't wait to see all of yours. I want to thank everybody who has supported me by liking my videos and subscribing to my channel. If you're not already a subscriber to my channel, I would love to have you as one. And I'd also like to see you over at my Facebook group, which is Rosie and David Patterns. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.